Welcome to Just Breathe. I am so happy you are all here today, and I'm really, really excited for you to meet and listen to my guest. Rick Clemons is a well-known culture disruptor in a good way, a closet buster, he's a men's coming out coach, and a bold move strategist, inspiring gay men to live life with no excuses, no fears, and no apologies. Tapping into his 25 plus years experience in personal development, Rick leverages his status as a late bloomer, coming out of the closet at 36 and stepping into entrepreneurship at 43 to lovingly kick other gay men in the ass to thrive in their own lives without apologies, both professionally and personally. He is a professionally certified coach, has been a frequent contributor to the Huffington Post, Your Tango, The Good Men Project. He is the author of Frankly, My Dear, I'm Gay. He's a podcaster, has 2 podcasts, Life Uncloseted and 40 Plus, Gay Men, Gay Talk. And I just want to share a few things that people say about Rick, working with Rick and having interviewed Rick. Rick is all heart, brains, and soul. Rick does a sensational job of digging deep and creating a safe, vulnerable space for listeners to grow and think. Rick speaks with such honesty and emotion that his message is felt as well as heard. So, Rick, welcome to Just Breathe. I am really delighted to have you here today and to have my audience get to meet you.
Thanks for having me. And it's always weird to hear that introduction. It's like, oh, really? That's me? Oh, wow. Okay. It's hard to hear stuff about yourself, and I think that's one of the interesting things about the journey of coming out of the closet is like really hearing who you really are for that first time and really owning it. It's such an interesting thing. And I've said that numerous times on stage is like, I not only want you to know who you are, I want you to hear in your own mind who you are. Really hear it for the first time, So,
right? Yeah. I think that's such an interesting distinction because you're right. It's one thing to say it, but to have somebody else say it to you or to repeat it in your head.
Yep.
Right.
And the more we hear it in our own head, it's the validation, it's the commitment, it's the courage, it's the confidence to say, yeah, this is me. And and it's not just sexuality. I mean, there's so many interesting things, like I was speaking to a podcast guest the other day and she said, I'm just so proud to be me as a Black woman. And she goes, and I hear that in my head. I'm proud to be a Black woman. I'm proud to be a Black woman. I said, well, what was different prior to that? She goes, I was ashamed to be a Black woman. I was scared to be a Black woman. Now I'm just proud to be a Black woman. I own it. This is who I am. She goes, I can't change it. I'm Black. Here we are, right? But and then so we got into this same conversation. I said, yeah, it's kind of like when I talk to my audience and stuff about like just hear the truth that you are gay, you are lesbian, you are bi, whatever, you're transgender. To hear it in your own mind and own it is the first step to like stepping into your truth. So.
It really is, because even if you have somebody else say it to you, like validate it to you, it's not the same as you validating it to yourself.
Nope. You got to own it, Yeah. You really have to own it. In fact, when I first started coaching, one of my good girlfriends who was also a coach and who does phenomenal work in another arena, she's known as the Dating with Dignity coach, and she's very well known. And she said, you're just not owning it, Rick. You need to own that you're the coming out coach. I'm like, yeah, I am. No, you're not. Just the way you just said that, you're not owning it. And it got to the point where, a couple of years later, we were at another event working together. And she's like, you're not owning it still. Just letting you know, buddy. And it irritated me. It literally pissed me off. I'm like, okay, fine. Got me going, though, because I started like, okay, this is it. And then suddenly that's when the podcast started. And the next thing I know, I was on national TV. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm owning it now, And
right.
I use that whole journey as a really beautiful metaphor for when somebody's really struggling with coming out And all of your parents who are listening, you're coming out too. Just letting you know, you're coming out.
That's right.
Own that journey. Own that you're a parent of an LGBTQ individual. Because when you can own that, the journey becomes much easier.
It's a game changer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It takes the fear out of it.
And it gives you confidence. Because
Mm-hmm.
you have to remove the fear, and you have to step into the confidence to say, yes, my child is gay. And no, you can't be that way with my kid. You know?
That's right.
And it's so interesting to just see that all unfold. And one of the biggest things that when I did start speaking professionally, I had been volunteering at PFLAG as one of the speakers on their speaker bureau in the LA area. And every time I had the beautiful privilege to go sit at a PFLAG meeting with a bunch of parents, just seeing them finally own, okay, this is my child. This is who they really are. There was almost like this sense of relief as well as this sense of fear, but more so the sense of relief with, okay, I finally just said it. This is my child. This is who they are. Because now it was like they gave themselves permission to go, okay, now what? What's next?
Right.
Now, you know?
Well, exactly. It's the whole idea of embracing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the other thing I always use, like the name it to tame it. Like once you
Yep.
say it, well, it's
Yep.
out there.
Yep.
Now what?
I
Now
love that
you can move
phrase.
forward.
I love the name
Right?
entertainment. As I was listening to some of your other podcasts, I'm like, I want to steal that. That's really good, you know?
Go
But
for it. You can
it's
totally do
so
it.
interesting because my whole brand. So my brand's definitely evolved. I mean, I'm known as a coming out coach, but over the years things have really changed, and I have grown and everything. And I did get to this place where, like, I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, I wish you talked to the straight folks." I'm like, I do talk to the straight folks. I'm trying to get you to just own up that it's okay for us to be who we are, right? But what they were
Right.
really getting at was, you really have this message that's about just unapologetically being yourself. And I will never forget the night that this all changed for me. I loved what I do. I still love what I do, but I get into the point where I'm like, if I have to tell my coming out story one more time, I think I'm just going to vomit all over the stage. I'm just like, it had become so routine, and I don't like routine. I
Right.
mean, I don't want to be that person, right? So I'm always looking for different things to say. And I was headed to a college in Southern California to speak to a pretty big group, like 400 students. They were all there for a grade. I'm like, okay, this is why I was dreading this. Like, they're not going to be paying no
Yeah.
attention. And here I am, white cracker boy, older guy, all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, Rick, get your head on. You're getting paid for this one. So, you go do you, right?
Right.
But in the middle of that talk, I thought, you know what? I really want to connect with these kids in a whole different way. And I
Mm-hmm.
know it was divine intervention because it became the basis of what now is my brand. And I said, okay, let's get real here. I know that about 97% of you sitting in this room, you're not queer. You don't fall under the queer umbrella. You're not gay. You're not lesbian. You're not trans. You're not bisexual. Or you may be bisexual, but you're not going to admit to it. Or you're not into any of this. But I know that 97% of you are not. I also know that about 100% of you are here because you're getting a grade. But I want to do a little experiment with you. So I said, I realize it's Wednesday, it's the middle of the week, you'd probably rather be going having hump day beer somewhere, but we're gonna go play for just a minute. I said, please close your eyes, but don't fall asleep. That's one requirement I have. Please don't fall asleep on me. But I want you to think about where you are right now. So you're in this room. Many of you are getting a grade for being here. Many of you are pursuing a degree at this university, possibly because somebody else said this is what you're supposed to do. So if that's you, and please don't open your eyes yet, raise your hand. And as soon as the hands went up, I said, okay, now do not put your hands down. And this is a safe space. I want you to open your eyes and look around. It was so interesting because about 70% of the room had their hands raised.
Oh,
And I
wow.
thought, wow, I have something here. I just
Yes,
took
you
my whole
do.
coming out journey and I related it to something that anybody could relate to, which is doing what anybody else wants you to do, right? Doing the thing that everybody tells you you're
Right.
supposed to be doing. And honestly, that became the basis for everything, Heather. I'm like, I've got something bigger now. I can go do this talk and I can relate it to anything. And suddenly
Right.
I started working with I'm a marketing guy, but sometimes you're too close to your own stuff. And it's like, I just couldn't break through. I
Right.
started working with a friend of mine who was brilliant, and we came up with the brand of no fears, no excuses, no apologies. And
It
that
is
works for
brilliant.
any
Yeah.
people. And I do this now with entrepreneurs. I do this with college students. I do this with the LGBTQ community. I can do this with people in midlife. Like I've got to go break out of the drudgery of this job, whatever it might be. I could even do this
Right.
with LGBTQ parents who have a child who are LGBTQ. You got to
Right.
dump the excuses why this is a problem for you, face the fears of what's coming up for you, and unapologetically go own that this is who your child is. And it just, every time I get to talk about this, obviously you can see I love talking about it, number one, but I love
Yes.
helping people see we're not that much different. Because everybody has
No.
something that they're making excuses about, that they have fears about, that they keep apologizing for, like, oh, yeah, well, I'll get to that someday. Or I really wish I would have got that done. I mean, let's take weight loss. That's a perfect example. We all like, well, I can't get the weight off, and I'm afraid, da, 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 da. And then, right after the holidays, I'm like, well, I put on 10 pounds. Da, da, da. Okay, I can use that analogy, but I think it's a beautiful space to invite parents who are working with a teen or a child, doesn't have to be just a teen, to really unpack that for themselves and
Yeah.
get really super honest, because it is a journey. It's not an easy journey sometimes. I get it, but
No. No, it's not. But it's a journey that doesn't end.
mm-mm.
Right. There's no ending to this journey. It's I think the biggest piece of it is embracing that it is a journey and you're on it
Yep,
together.
yep,
Right. So, I mean, just like parenting is a journey. I mean, everything we do in life is a journey, right? I
yep,
mean, it's kind of an overused word, but it's an accurate description.
mm-hmm.
So, I think it's a lot of it is just like you've been saying, the mindset. Like once you kind of shift that,
Yep,
you're like, oh, okay, well, I can
right,
do this because there are now steps that I understand, right?
mm-hmm.
Instead of it being like this whole just this is so overwhelming or this is so scary or I don't know, I don't know what to do, right?
Right. It's so interesting. I'm going to go back to the PFLAG situation, and I
Yeah.
remember using this same analogy. Like, and a lot of parents in the PFLAG, when they share, they say, the day that my child came out of the closet is the day I went into the closet. I'm like, yeah, you're right, because you got to go figure this out. But I also believe that once you start to own it and figure it out, part of the power is to realize every day you're going to have the opportunity to come out too. Because you never know, a conversation, a casual conversation, something you say, it's like, oh, I'm faced with this. So part of what I encourage
Yeah.
anybody, whether you're the parent or the actual individual who's like coming out of the closet about who you are in your world, is to not be disillusioned. It's kind of like diversity and inclusion hot buttons that are
Mhm.
going on in our beautiful world these days. They're like, oh, okay, we address this once a year. No, it's not a once a year
Right.
conversation. It's a daily conversation. Same thing with coming out. It's not a one and done. And I wish it was. Actually, I wish it wasn't. I wish there was no having to do it at all. But it's a daily
Right.
experience. I'm coming out, today on your podcast. And I always, I see that anytime I get the opportunity to speak about this. And sometimes it's a casual conversation anywhere. And I've had people like, wow, I can't believe you actually said that. I'm like, said what? And I had somebody actually kind of say that to me a few weeks ago. I was in Trader Joe's and the clerk and I are just kind of chatting. They're like, well, what are you up to today? I said, oh, my hubby and I are probably going to go for a hike. And this gal, as I'm walking out, she goes, I just wanted to tell you something. I'm like, oh, okay. Did I drop something or something? She goes,
Yeah.
I was standing behind you in line. And she goes, you're impressive. And I don't even know you. She goes, but you just said, yeah, my husband and I are going out for a hike. She goes, so many people wouldn't share something like that in public. I'm like, well, it's my truth. I'm not, what?
Right.
I said, I guess because I have become comfortable. Yes, I know there are places I may not say something like that, but I try not to hide it at this point. And it is tough. And as a parent, I've been through it in my own world. And as parents that are listening, I'm not saying what I'm saying to like, get over it. I'm saying what I'm saying to like, you will embrace this in your own way
Right.
and learn and love to embrace it in your own way. I think one of the things that I love my community. I love my LGBTQ community. But I'll be the first to also say we put a lot of high expectations on everybody else starting to march to our drum, which I think is unfair. I would like it that everybody accepts this, but there's also a matter of give people time. There's also a
Right.
matter of I've given you plenty of
Oh, sure.
time. Now get over it. But I think sometimes and this is again for the parents listening, maybe some of the teens too, or kids that are listening to this, you have to make space for people to step into this. And if you don't make space, you're going to get pushback. And just in my mind, justifiably so. Because when we don't give people room to like, okay, I need to process this. We can't
Right.
demand that they accept it right out the gate. I know. I am raising my hand. Those of you who can't see me, I'm raising my hand because after the second time that I did come out, I told my parents, this is the way it is. You have to accept this. And man, I was a jerk. I mean, I was a jerk. Now, we're 20 some odd years into this. I don't accept when it comes up anymore. I'm like, nope, we've had this conversation. We're done. We're done.
Right.
You have embraced me and my husband, you can say what you want to say, but that does not mean I have to stay in the room and accept it. That does not mean I have to stay on the phone and accept it either. And every
Right.
once in a while, with one of my parents, I have to literally go a long time without talking to him. Like, I'm not going to do this with you again. You're 70 some years old. I'm 58 years old. I think I'm an adult. Let's get rid. I've raised two kids. I know these things that even I, as a parent, there's times I'm like, shut up, Rick, just shut up. You need to let your
Right.
kid do their thing.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that is, I'm so glad you said that because that is a very important piece that we kind of miss, right?
Mm-hmm.
The whole, we'll kind of say, oh, take time to process it. And then we just keep going, right? Instead of really talking about what that means. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not only do you as the person coming out, Connor as the person coming out, need that time and space to process, right? The parent needs that time and space to process. Anybody who you're sharing that information with needs the time and space to process it.
Yep.
And obviously, our goal is to, hopefully someday it will be a world where that doesn't need to be the case. But right now it is. And I think that is just it is the kind thing to do
Mm-hmm.
if you want to have these relationships.
Well, it's not only the kind thing to do, and one of the things that I say when I talk about helping. So I focus, as you said it in the intro, I really focus on men in midlife, helping them come out of the closet. That was my experience, even though I did it at a younger age too. But there's a key element to this. I want to help men in midlife come out of the closet, and here's the key element, with dignity and respect for themselves and everyone else on the journey. I will not work with a guy.
Yes.
Well, yes, pretty much. I will not work with a guy who says, I want to come out and it's all about me now. And I've given everything else. I've given my wife the house. I've got the kid. I won't work with that guy. We will not mesh. Even though there was
Right.
a bit of me that was kind of that way at the beginning of this whole unraveling thing, I can't do that because there's a processing piece. Now, at some
Mhm.
point, if your spouse is just like, nope, not going to do that. And I've worked with some people who had a really tough space there. And I get it. It is not easy to suddenly, oh, this person I'm married to, they're suddenly not who I thought they were. I get that piece. But there's a lot of people who go through divorces for a lot of other reasons besides your spouse is gay. So let's get real about that. But I also feel like you have to do this with dignity and respect if you want dignity and respect in return. You can't just say it's a one-way street. And when your teen or child is dealing with this and they're not giving you that time, that's probably a really good conversation to have as a parent. I mean, we all have these parents, right, Heather? I mean,
right.
I'm trying to teach my kids dignity and respect, and every once in a while I still have to go there with them. Like, okay, I realize you're 23 and 26, but...
Yes. Well, and I think, I often, when those things happen, I think, okay, this is not fully developed yet, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that piece where you kind of have to slow it down and be like, okay, this is, let's just stop for a minute and talk about why it is you're really feeling the way you're feeling, right? Because typically it's not, so-and-so has disrespected me. I don't feel, or it's like that, I'm gay and everybody else needs to get out of my way, right? Like, forget everybody else because this is who I am and I hate everybody, right? And that's I think that's definitely a natural piece for, especially an adolescent, teen, young adult coming out and probably for anybody coming out, but just seeing in the space where I work. And they need to work through that because that's not okay to continue. Mm-hmm. They will not, it will not end well.
No. Well, and it won't end well on the other side either. And that's why I say I want to give people enough room to grow into it. But if they don't, after 5 or 6 years, if there's, then it's time for that relationship to truly move into a different space altogether. And I always get the question well, how did your, ex-wife do this? Well, it wasn't easy at first. And then we kind of went through a really good space. And then due to other things, we don't really have any relationship at this point. And I'm okay with that. And even our kids are okay with that because it is just what it is. But I gave room. She also gave room. I'm not going to say it was a one-way street. And you just finally figure it out sometimes. But I love what you just said, and I'd love to give something to your listeners that's a really great tool that I use when people are like, but this is what you have to do. So let's take your example of the teen who says, well, I'm gay and you just need to have to accept this. So here's the tool. So then say, and this can be used with anybody, but okay, so then if I do accept this, then what? And whatever they say, and say, okay, and then what? And then what? This is not being a jerk. This is I'm trying to get that person to what's really what you're wanting from the person that you're saying you have to accept it, because you have to accept it actually isn't what they want to be accepted. Okay, let's get real about that. But it's about the fourth or fifth time you ask this beautiful question of then what or so what. I don't really like so what because it sounds like a sassy little kid. Yeah. But okay, so if I accept you, then what? What is it you're wanting?
Right.
And then if they answer and say, okay, and then if I do that, then what is it you're wanting? Because first we're starting to have a conversation. Now, an adolescent teen's probably going to go, Mom or Dad, you're being a real jerk right now. Okay, well, we're the parents, so we get a little bit of privilege to be that. The whole point of the exercise is to really get to the bottom line. And it's such a powerful question. I use it all the time in my coaching practice with people. They'll say, well, if I come out, then, all my friends are going to reject me. Okay, and then what? And it always comes down to, well, I don't want to feel lonely. I don't want to experience loneliness. I don't want to experience rejection. But sometimes it takes that 3 or 4 times of asking it, and suddenly it's like, okay, so here's what I just heard you say. You don't want to come out and lose friends because you don't want to experience rejection and loneliness. So let's work with rejection and loneliness. How could you not feel rejected and lonely? And what could you do? And I think this is something that parents,
oh my gosh,
ask the questions, allow your child, teach them how to do this. Okay, so Mom and Dad, you're really having a hard time accepting because you're afraid of what other people will think. So what if other people think this, then what? Now, you'd have to have I'm going to give some credit. If a teen could ask those kind of questions, I'm going to be like, high-fiving and
Right.
like, wow, you're not on social media, are you? Or maybe you are on
Right.
social media.
Exactly.
Maybe you are on social media and you're going for like the Deepak Chopras and all that. I don't know. But it's just I feel like it's a really valuable tool that people can take away from
It
this
is.
conversation and really learn and use.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Because not only can you use it in this specific conversation, you can really use it in
Yep.
every time you kind of hit a communication roadblock, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're kind of, I love that so much. And I
Mm-hmm.
hope everybody out there is like really taking this in.
Use it
Rewind
with
and listen again.
your spouse.
Right.
And if I don't make
Right.
dinner, then what? See how far you get with that
If
one.
I,
But
right. Yeah. Good luck. Good luck.
but
Well,
no, I've
there's
actually have used it a lot, even with
DoorDash.
yeah, exactly. But in the few times that I've had the beautiful privilege, and I do consider it a beautiful privilege, to work. I'm not a therapist. Coach is completely separate. So there's a lot of times I'm like, hey, y'all need therapy. I would love,
Yep.
but there's been a few times throughout my coaching career where I've had the privilege of work with, a couple, a husband and a wife. Sometimes it's been the wife coming out, other times it's been the husband coming out. Um, where that questioning has helped that couple navigate so much and really start to see each other, even though they're in different sides of the court, so to speak. It kind of almost helps bring them together. And
Right.
that's why I love sharing that tool. I think it's one of them.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you.
Of
That
course.
is really, it is so valuable. And so I'm just sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, like the number of conversations, because I know, what plays, and this is for everyone, not just parents when your child comes out, but, like in your space, when
Mm-hmm.
married couples, one comes, this is across the board where there is that sometimes you're so stuck and frozen in that fear and that
Right.
what if, right?
Mm-hmm.
That having a question like this to really use as a tool to slow it down
Yep.
and really get to the bottom of, okay, what is causing this fear? What am I
Right.
most afraid of?
Yeah.
Or,
What's
right?
underneath
What
all of
am
this?
I
Because there's always something underneath. There's always something
always,
underneath.
always,
And
and it's
you can do that.
different for everyone.
You can do this with yourself. You don't have to have somebody else. It's like, okay, I
Huh,
really want to get up and exercise, but I just don't feel like doing it this morning. Okay. And then what? Well,
right.
then I'll feel like I got better rest. Okay. And if you get better rest, then what? Well, then I'll feel more alive. Okay. And you feel more alive, then what you be able to do? Well, then I'll be much more focused at work. Okay. So you kind of give yourself a hall pass today because hey, I'm not. Other people say, well, if I miss it, then I'm going to feel guilty. Okay. And then if you feel guilty, then what? Well, then I probably will have a really cruddy day. That one, you're like, okay, do you want to have a cruddy day or do you want to have a good day? It's just, I do this with myself all the time. Like, because I've got a lot of, as we all do, I have a lot of stuff going on. And sometimes I'm like,
Right.
well, I could edit the book or I could do this. But if I don't edit the book, I'm like, yeah, if you don't edit the book, then what? It'll be there tomorrow. There'll be, of course, the book's sitting here yelling at me right now. Like, that's what you say every day to me. But
I
you can see
understand that. Yeah.
my office
Uh-huh.
is a very fun place to play because everything talks back to me. My book, my podcast, all this stuff, my clients. But I think it is a powerful thing. Also, for you parents, I want to just because I've had some challenges with my own parents. I think it's important to know your child still loves you. This has nothing to do with something you did wrong. This has nothing to do with not being loved. And I know that's a hard thing for many parents to wrap their head around. But if you realize, or you can start to step into, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if you can start to be invited in to think about how much does your child love themselves if they're saying, this is who I am? And how much more do you love your child when they're being exactly who they're meant to be? There's a beautiful story that it's been at least 7 years ago that I was listening to, or I was actually watching Oprah. And she had Martha Beck on, really well-known life coach.
Yeah,
She was
yeah.
Oprah's life coach protege at the time. That was just I was probably 3-4 years into my coaching practice at this point, and she said something that has stuck with me forever. She goes, "It's interesting about," and this was about the time she was kind of coming public about being a lesbian. I was like, oh my God, she's one of us.
Right.
And I was like kind of shocked
Welcome.
by it. But she said, "Here's the interesting thing." She goes, "As I've learned in my own journey coming out of the closet," and of course my ears immediately perked up. I went, "Ooh." She goes, "If I'm pretending and I'm in a relationship and I'm pretending who I am in that relationship, and that person who's having a relationship with me is not aware that I'm pretending, I'm having a pretend relationship. But suddenly,
Oh,
if I'm in a relationship and I'm pretending to be somebody I'm not, and I feel like my spouse is pretending to be somebody they're not because they're afraid to tell me who they really are," and it just has nothing to do with sexuality. Like, there's lots of things we pretend to be in our relationship. She goes, "If I'm pretending and they're pretending, guess what? We're having a pretend relationship." And that's really stuck with me. And especially when you're dealing with your child, if your child's pretending to be somebody they're not, you're actually not having a relationship with your child. You're having a relationship with the person your child is pretending to be. And just let that sink in, because that's huge.
that is so huge. That is so absolutely profound
And I
and
can
so
attest to that.
completely true, right?
Yeah, because I
I
came out at
mean,
19 to my parents. And there's a blessing in this whole story. I believe there's a blessing. I actually, and I say this, anybody who's heard me before, they're like, "Oh, we know what he's about to say," but that's okay. Hear it again, because it's a
that's
good
right.
lesson. I actually don't believe I'd be sitting here having this conversation if I'd stayed out of the closet when I came out at 19, because I was naive. I was
Mhm.
not sexually active per se. I'd done what most quote unquote heterosexual boys had done, you know, played a little bit around with a girl here and there, but I'd never had sex, never, like, beyond the Monica Lewinsky, Clinton stuff. I hadn't gone even to that. Okay. And I came out right as the AIDS epidemic was just starting. I honestly believe if I had stayed out, I would probably be dead, because I wouldn't have known what was going on. I would have been like, "Let's go do this," all that sort of stuff.
Right.
But then what that led me to was, for the next, so from 19 to 36, I pretended to be somebody I wasn't. So everybody that I was having relationships with, I was in a pretend relationship with. Now, there was aspects of it that were true. I loved my wife. I cared about my family. I loved my friends, but there was a piece of Rick that was completely pretend. And
Right.
man, that completely pretend ate me alive, because I was one thing in
Mhm.
certain spaces and something completely different. Now, all of us do this. I'm not saying, I'm talking more to the depths of, I had to keep my story straight. And
Right.
it got really torturous, literally torturous, to keep the story straight until it didn't. And the reason I share that story is not only for kids who are listening, because I want you to go enjoy your life and be who you are, because there's nothing worse than pretending to be something you're not. But I also share that story, hopefully that a parent will hear that and go, "Oh my God, this guy was tortured from 19 to 36. And
Yeah.
for some of my clients, I mean, I have clients that are 65, 70. The oldest person I've worked with so far is 78 years old and just coming out of the closet.
Oh, wow.
So just let that picture
Oh,
sink in. For that many years of your life, you have hidden this. And when he worked with me, he goes, "I've known since I was 18. But society said this wasn't mine." And he goes, and I had a beautiful life. He goes, "I had a beautiful life. I had an amazing journey with my wife. I have great kids." And And it just, it's those things. But I share that story because to me, pretending is one of the worst. Okay. Pretending if you're in Hamilton, hey, you're in a hit Broadway show. Okay, cool. But pretending to be somebody you're not. And in fact, when I have the beautiful privilege of speaking to an audience, the last line of every talk, regardless of whether I'm speaking to entrepreneurs or college students or whoever it is the truth of who you are is far more powerful than the false truth that you're pretending to be. So go show the world who you are. Because I want everybody to be who they're meant to be.
Wow. Is there just like you'd hear a pin drop in the room when you say that? Because that is so powerful, and that is something that every single one of us can benefit from, right?
And it doesn't matter about your sexuality or gender identity or anything. No. It's about who we are as humans, But
and I think it also, though, speaking specifically to my audience and to your audience, it helps us wrap our heads around, right? Mm-hmm. It helps us really. And something else that you had said a little bit earlier that really struck me, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's along the same lines where this is not about parents. This is not about you, right? And this is, and I think that's a very easy thing for us as parents, or perhaps as the spouse who didn't know, right? To be like, what did I do wrong? Right? What could I have said? This is a failure on my part, whatever, narrative you have, and to realize, oh, this is not about you at all. This is about your child, your spouse, your friend, your adult child stepping into their 100% authentic self.
I love that you brought that up, Heather, because I agree. It's not about them, but it is about them. It's not about them primarily. All of us play second base in these spaces. When my daughters were figuring out themselves, I became the jerk parent, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did this. I said I would never do this. My parents did this. Why did I just do that? And it actually became my very first Huffington Post article where I talked about a situation with my older daughter. And I'm like, you just did what your parents did to you, Rick, about her exploring her sexuality. Bad shame, all of that on you, Rick. But when I realized, okay, wait, this isn't about me, it's about her, and I need to move to second place.
Right.
Then I could breathe. And then I could see clearly. Well, kind of clearly. We still have to work through it. But and I'm going to share this because I think this is pivotal for parents too. I had this freak out moment when she said she was dating a girl. I totally freaked out. Why? Because my parents had said to me, you are going to ruin your daughter's lives and you're going to teach them to be just like you. And there it was in, high definition TV happening in front of my eyes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can bear this. And that was really, truly what it was, is I don't know if I can bear this. And then I suddenly said, Rick, back it up, man. Back it up.
Yeah.
It isn't about you. And that's why I love your podcast, because I think you bring that forward. It's about having the conversations, and it's about making this about your kids and about making it about others. And we all beautifully get to be humble if we can get ourselves to that space. Humble and take the second space.
Right. But I think that you, excuse me, just said that so very clearly. It's not that we don't matter and that how we're feeling doesn't matter, and that it's, it does very much, but it is not a matter of, this is a reflection on you. This is, it's kind of shifting that from taking this on as oh my gosh, to, okay, I can I can sit with this and process it, and it still might be super uncomfortable, and I may not understand it, but oh my gosh, this is my kid.
Yeah, exactly.
So, wow. Thank you. Okay, so many absolutely beautiful pieces and incredible tools that you have shared. And I'm laughing because I had written down like 6 questions I wanted to ask you, and I didn't ask any of them, but I love the way,
here, so.
right? I know. Should I rapid fire them to you?
Yeah, because I love rapid fire because I'm like, I can add, I can go on, but then I'm like, oh, I can throw and I can drop like, oh, I think I can. Let your ego
Yeah.
step aside.
Okay.
No, I'd love, let's see what we can do here. I'd love it.
Let's rapid fire for like 2
Okay.
minutes
Yeah,
before we wrap
totally.
up. I think that'll be super fun. Okay. So you talk about having a 6-step process.
Yep.
What are the 6 steps?
6 steps are to realize you're in confusion. And the only way you get out of confusion is to get curious. And the more curious you get, the more courageous you get to go do the thing and be who you want to be. But it takes more than courage because you got to commit to it. And as you commit, you gain confidence. And the more confidence you have, the more consistently you can show up as a parent of an LGBTQ child or as a person who is LGBTQ.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, again, everybody rewind and write that down. That can be your new Post-it note. I don't know if you're like me. I have Post-it notes all over my desk that have all these different things. That's a Post-it note right there. I love that. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Okay, so next one. What is the most important, we kind of touched on this already, but I just want to see what you'll say in rapid fire. Most important thing parents can do to support their LGBTQ child?
Take second place.
Love it. What is the most, or one piece, not most important, but one piece of advice that you would give to a young person coming out?
You're worth it.
Oh, I love that. Bravo. And then what is your advice for overcoming fear? Because that is part of your tagline, which I love.
Fears are only as powerful as we give them life.
Rick, it has been such a delight, and I think that we could probably go on for another hour. But
and we will come on my podcast, so we'll
that's right.
The favor
Yes.
to do that.
Exactly. We will shift over, everyone. This is so exciting. And I will put everything that you need to know about Rick in the show notes, and you can find his website, his podcasts, his books, all of these amazing things. And I mean, if you even picked up like one of these absolute pearls of wisdom, you can only imagine what his books and his podcasts are like. So I highly recommend.
You might not want to listen.
Maybe
when I talk to the gay
okay.
mailman, it's a little bit
That's
racy.
true.
But,
you may not.
But
that might be a listen at your own discretion.
Honestly, if you're a parent who's like got an older gay male teen, you could pick up some stuff from that because we go for the jugular on talking about the funny stuff that older gay males do. I'm not talking about doing stuff to teens, but like, man, they're just like teenage boys, even at 40-some years old. So just saying.
I actually think having an older, well, he's 21 now. For me, it is a ton of awesome information, and it's stuff that I wish I had known 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, right? Because
but I like to put that caveat in because that's one where
that's important.
The potty mouth and everything comes out, and it's really fun. But
listen at your own risk.
Yes, please do. Yes.
So is there anything else that you'd like to add, to share before we wrap up?
I think the only other thing is to realize which we've already touched on, and I hate to say it again, but I also love saying it again. This is a journey. It's a journey, and there is no destination. There's lots of destinations along the way, but I don't believe the coming out journey and being a parent of somebody who's in the LGBTQ space, there is no finality to it. because my parents are in their 70s and I'm, late 50s, and we're still in the journey. And the only finality that actually comes is when we depart this experience. But even then, the journey continues because it's everything that we left behind to teach others. So the
Right.
journey is the journey, and just embrace the journey. Now that sounds very cliche and coachy, but I believe it. The journey
Well,
is the journey.
it's true. It is absolutely true. And I just appreciate so much you coming on the show today and being a part of this incredible conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. I've so enjoyed it. I can't wait to have you on mine. So this will be fun to
I know.
continue it over there. So
That's right. Exactly. It will be. Oh my goodness. Yes. To be continued, everyone.